how is it going? Hope you're having a good week. I'm kind of happy, especially this week, because the chess club is officially open. Limited number of people, but still, being open is better than just being closed, right? So, let's see, what other news do I have? So, today I wanted to show you a little bit about one of my favorite books, The Giants of Strategy. This is a pretty old book, I think that's 2009, by Neil MacDonald, and I really like this book because it has so many interesting features to offer. And one of the things that I really like about it was I did a video about how to beat Kasparov in 10 steps. That was actually from this book. I believe I did say that back then too. And yeah, so they have a specific chapter that they called it planning on a grand scale, and I really like that one because it has so much mix of strategy and tactics, and it's just everything. So I kind of wanted to show you guys a little bit of that. And yeah, let's see how is my favorite book doing, and feel free to send me your favorite book recommendations and we can go check those out too. So let's look at this board that we have. It's just from the beginning. This is a game between Nimzowitsch and Rubinstein in 1926, almost 100 years ago, getting there. So Nimzowitsch is white, and I did also read the book Nimzowitsch wrote, well, one of them, the My System one, and I really like that one too. I feel like when I look at it right now, it just feels a little like some stuff could be a little bit updated or improved, but that's really helped my chess understanding. This was like a big stepping stone for me. So if you feel like you have a lot of time and you want to read some book, that's an interesting book to read. You don't have to accept everything he says, but it was a very nice point of view. Hello from India, nice. Okay, so I'm not really going to focus on the opening much because it's just a typical opening and it's just a symmetrical English. It's not that much to it, and the lines have been updated in the past 100 years, so we're not going to worry about the opening too much. But what I really like is the pawn structure that they get out of it. So just looking at the pawn structure, just right here, right now, you can see that, okay, so this bishop is, oops, I've gotten used to leeches and chess.com that I can just click and it highlights it, haha. Alright, so this bishop is pretty okay, well placed. This knight is definitely going to get kicked away at some point, you don't know exactly when. There's going to be a f4 coming up later. Just looking at the pawn structure, these are the little things that you could pick up. What else? One thing that you don't necessarily know is what are you going to do with this bishop. I mean, ideally if you get f4, f5, then alright, this bishop is good placed here, could come out to f4, like you can just eyeball it as you're going. But the one thing that you do know is that you do want f4. So that's something that you can work on. Well, and again, not right now because your knight is under attack, but just looking at what the position has to offer. Okay, so we do this knight e2, our idea, we're still supporting this f4 idea. Now b5 is coming up, right? So I wouldn't really recommend something like a4 because you just give this outpost to the knight. I mean, you would stop some b5, but it's a very drastic pawn change, position. It's a very drastic pawn movement that changes your position forever, and this knight's always going to be welcomed here. I don't know if I would be ready to make that commitment, so I wouldn't play a4. That's just my reasoning. And also, your game is much more concentrated in the center and in the king side, and that's what you would want to go for, right? So let's say you play your knight g3 as Nimzowitsch did, get your f4 finally. Alright, now my first question for you. White to move, what do you want to do? Hello from Nepal. extremely explosive opening. Yeah, actually that is true. It's pretty explosive, right? So you have a lot of options. Are you ready to start pushing these pawns? Do you feel like kicking this knight away? Do you want to bring out some queen, some rook, some bishop? I'm just throwing ideas at you, and I'm going to wait to see some replies and just get a good vibe of what you guys are thinking about. So yeah, just let me know, what are you feeling, what do you want to do, and we will go from there. Alright, so I have a e5 line. Nice. Hello, say hi to my daughter Genesis. Nice. Hello. 1400 is not a bad rating, don't worry, we all start somewhere. And to continue the Dilip reply, any coach is going to be good, but it's more important for you to have the time to actually sit down and learn on your own too. So if you have the time, why not? Let's see, so we have queen f3, queen g3. That's a little bit illegal. I assume you wanted queen g4, Axel. Queen f3, hello from Kenya, hello. Bishop d2, f5, queen h5. Okay, so basically these are the three moves that you guys want, and you want this queen to go, well, somewhere, depending on where you, there is, it's being knight e2, support f4, threaten d4. Ah, hello Brian Clark, I remember you. Hold on, I'm thinking. So knight e2, you just actually brought the knight from c3 to e2, and then you went to g3. Even though knight e2 might look a little bit tempting to attack this, you're actually never going to take it because of bishop c5, and you would get pinned and, well, attacked. So I don't think that's a very accurate move. So, well, that's a no to knight e2. a3 is interesting. a3 is definitely something that I would also consider. Okay, so I'm glad with the responses I got. I also do kind of like queen g4, but my problem is that queen g4, this is something to just be cautious about. I mean, e5, it's not like a real horrible threat. f5, now this bishop is also open. Bishop f6 could be coming. It's like not the end of the world. But, and also I don't really necessarily think that he would play e5. And also another thing to keep in mind is f5 doesn't really work because this is pinned. So queen g4 looks interesting to me as well. How about h4? H4 is something that potentially could happen later on, but your position is not ready for it, Jason. And yeah, anytime, Dilip. Okay, so I am a big fan of all the moves that you guys said, but queen f3 is kind of one of those silent killers, because another thing to actually keep in mind is that black has to somehow get like developed the queen side, right? So one way that black could potentially do it is with b5, and right now something like b5, there could be this explosive e5s as well. Rook moves, bishop back. Now what do you want to do with your bishop? Now again f5 could be coming up, and just it kind of keeps an eye on the queen side as well. I keep calling this king side, I don't know why. Actually, I know why. I've been playing way too much 4-player chess. Guilty pleasure. Yeah, I keep mixing my sides right now. But besides that, back to some real chess. Yeah, queen f3 is another that just keeps an eye on this as well, and kind of weakens the queen side too. So in the game, Rubinstein played king h8, and so the idea is, yeah, okay, so I don't know if you meant bishop d2 before king h8 or right now, but yes, bishop d2 right now. Bishop d2 is very strong because true, you like d2 is not going to be the final diagonal for your bishop because it's not doing its best, but ooh, Sydney, you do have a good memory. I do think this is that one too. Wow, yeah, it is that one. All right, Sydney. Very, very nice memory. Okay, so the idea with bishop, this is one of the classics, so it is possible that you guys have seen at least some positions of these, not necessarily the whole game, but yeah, I'm impressed. Nice. Okay, so bishop d2, it's kind of like one of those moves that you're waiting, you're still trying to see what's going on. You are trying to provoke opponents to potentially remove the knight. Another thing is you still are not sure if you want e5, you want f5, you want to remove the rook. You still are not sure what you want to do. So preferably don't just make a commitment like e5 and then be like, oops, that's not exactly what I wanted. So it's okay. No spoilers. Yeah, okay, well, don't worry, I didn't say which move or when, so just maybe a knight h5 could be coming up, but knight h1, not knight h5, well, knight h5 could come up too, who knows. But my point being that didn't give real spoilers, still pretty interesting. Okay, so after bishop d2, what do you think black should do? That's a good question, right? Do you want to push some pawns? Do you want to develop queenside? Also, why do you think black played this king? Oops, nope, that's not the move. Why do you think black played king h8 right now? Is this, oh, could I at some point in the future play tournaments without having a chess club, like real FIDE tournaments? I mean, Manny, technically yes. I don't think really you need to have a chess club to play FIDE rated tournaments, but also the rules are a little bit different in US than where I grew up. So I'm sure it's easy to find FIDE tournaments to play, well, after there are tournaments to be played. Alright, let's go back. Oh yeah, I remember you, Genesis Rodriguez. Anytime, glad to have you. Queen c7. Queen c7 is interesting, but how does king h8 flows with queen c7? And yes, to play f5. Yep, you are correct. Oh boy. Okay, I have problem with pronunciations, as you guys all know who have watched me once. Every single time I struggle with pronunciation. So I apologize for mispronouncing from right now, and future apologies to be made too. But yes, f5, yes, to play f5, that is correct. A few people mentioned it, and right. So f5 is the idea that is supported by this king h8, because it's kind of simple, kind of interesting, because so even though white still hasn't shown his hand with f5 or e5, black is kind of growing impatient and just wants this pressure to be off, because so I've been getting some questions also, where is the psychology behind chess and psychology, that's we call this class, and sometimes I do forget to completely walk you through my thought process. And it's like, okay, so in this position right now, it's not just about which move is the best, because f5 is a good move, e5 is a good move. They both are going to have consequences, because like if you play e5, well, the bishop is going to move, and this could potentially become like f5 could come up. So breathe, thank you. But so my point being that it is actually a very interesting thing that white isn't necessarily playing this f5 or e5, because in the game, like just imagine yourself sitting there, you're playing as black, your opponent has all these opportunities with f5, with e5, you are going to go a little impatient and either make a mistake, or if not making a mistake, you can't, I mean, it's really hard to handle the pressure of just sitting there and waiting. It feels like a sitting duck. So that's the way I would feel, just sitting there. I can't develop my queen side, can't bring up my rook. What is even my knight doing up here? So yeah, So just the psychological pressure is also something that would kind of be a little hard to deal with. So there's your psychology of the day. And so yes, that is actually just thinking about how I would feel and trying to explain that. That's the way I would definitely feel, definitely under pressure, just like, oh boy. So that's another thing. So f5. Now, a question for you guys. Do you think white should take it, white should push it, or white should ignore it? Well, those are basically your three choices. So yeah, just let me know what do you want to do. And to tell you, to be completely honest, I know I wouldn't take on f5. So now, but choosing between e5 or completely ignoring it, I don't know which one I would choose. Just first look, I would check to see if there's anything more to e5. If not, just so right now, again, this is another way to like implement a little bit more pressure on your opponent, at least psychologically, because so if you are not taking it and if you're not pushing it, this tension is always going to be there. And it's like one of those constant moves that, so you know for yourself, I'm not going to take it, I'm not going to push it, but the opponent, every single move he has to calculate, okay, so do I want to push now, do I want to take now? It's just one of those things. Yes, I'm an e5 would make e6 a little bit more weak, but it would also give this diagonal to black, because now black could easily play something like this, and your bishop won't be able to make the best of itself, and now this a8 h1 diagonal would actually belong to black, so be careful with that. Rook to d1, take, pressure, yeah. Rook e1, rook e1 is the best one, because, so I understand your idea with rook d1. Rook d1 makes sense if he takes it, because now you are correct. You do have this pressure on d4. But yeah, rook e1 is the best one, because so yes, you are not going to necessarily take on f5 right away, but you do have that option. So having your rook on e1, whenever you choose to take on f5, then this rook is also opened up. So yeah, that's something to keep an eye out. If he takes on e4, I like to just take back with the pawn and push for f5 the next few moves. Now queen h5 is also possible. You can even just try to go for some cool mates if possible. I've been doing some cheap tactics recently, just trying to find a mate. Alright, yeah, taking with knight is also very interesting. I was a little worried if I take with the knight, what happens with e5, because I was kind of a little skeptical, but I guess just taking over here makes sense. You don't really need to worry about it that much, right? No, this is good. Don't worry about that. White is good in there. Yeah, exactly. Taking with the knight is also very interesting. I think both taking with pawn or knight are interesting, especially knight on e4. Another plus that it has, is this knight g5 and going after h7 potentially. And also e6 is pretty weak. This knight could actually attack that. So yeah, I actually don't know. Right now I'm more leaning towards taking with knight, because like, what are you gonna do? Bishop e7. That's okay. What about queen h5? Now I could consider f5 even more seriously. Okay, there we go. f5, opening up this bishop. Things are good. The one thing that taking with knight makes worries me a little is the possibility of knight d5. So those are some things to look out for. All right, let's go back to the game. So Rubinstein did not take the pawn on e4, and he just went knight c6. So knight c6 is a cool move. Nothing wrong with it. Just trying to regroup some pieces, reorganize material. It's perfectly fine. So in the game, Nimzowitsch tried to, well, he played rook e2. I think rook e2 is another one of those little psychological moves, because rook e2 is not actually having any one-move threats, but rook e2 does have potential for doubling the rooks up wherever necessary, potential of trying to somewhat, if necessary, again, bring bishop to the king side. Just, it has a lot of potential. It's not necessarily like if you look at this position, you're not going to be like, yeah, rook e3 is the first move I want to play. Yeah, exactly, caveman style. Yeah, but rook e2 is pretty nice, and rook e2 does serve a lot of purposes. And I can only hope that I would be able to find it in my games. Nimzowitsch. Okay. So black tries to develop a little bit, put more pressure. Now, white to move, do you think, are you ready to do anything with e-pawn? Do you want to push? Do you want to take? Do you want to do some cool maneuver somewhere? Just let me know what you want to do. Also, another way to think about it is, so you can look and see that you have this positional advantage, and you can also see that white has definitely spatial advantage. This pawn, this d4 pawn, is somewhat cut off from the rest of the black pieces, and it could potentially become a cool target. What else? What else is good for white? Bishop on c4 is pretty good for white, right? It's kind of a has a very nice diagonal. Well, not necessarily right now, but if you decide to take. What else? What else? You could potentially start forming an attack on the king side because of your strong bishop over here. Because the king can't just escape. That's just like, king would become like, that's just not going to be really possible. Now you want a rook on c1, right? Yeah, you're correct, Sydney. Queen c7 is kind of the sad point, but also Queen c7 is a very, very natural and very like everyday move, because like you kind of do need to develop, but how? And I don't really see any other way. Like something like bishop d7, I mean, it's possible, but like, what are you doing with this bishop? The other things that we could think about is, if this queen was already in the king side, it could kind of cover up the king a bit. No, but queen e8 can't really happen because of this pin. Same with queen e7, and just to show you, queen f6 is also a blunder, so don't blunder. And so yes, that's I think Rubinstein kind of broke under the pressure and played queen c7. Alright, so you guys want diagonal, you want to prevent knight a5, you guys want to start pushing on h4. Whoa, that's a lot of different ideas. Alright, so I already spoke a little bit about the potential advantages that white could have, right? So thinking about just trying to do an assessment is like, it might not be enough, because like I spoke about this weak pawn, I spoke about this strong bishop, and potentially having some open files for this guys, for the rooks. But like let's look at this take. So just looking at it, do you feel this position favors white or black? I mean, I like white. I hope you guys also like white right now, just because of the positional and spatial advantage, and this open rook and this open bishop. Am I convincing enough somehow? Okay, so the other way to think about it is, if black has just two moves, black is going to play like bishop d7, rook e8, and white's advantage is kind of just not as visible anymore. Becomes one of those imaginary advantages. Okay, that was kind of cool. And yeah, so okay, so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, like doing a little bit of assessment of the position. And all right, what else can we think about? Well, as white, you kind of have to start considering to actually form a real attack to black's king, right? So my question is, how can you start attacking black's king? Why allow bishop d7? Well, it's white to move, so you don't, like, I mean, you can come up with other moves if you want to, but true, but taking on f5 is actually a good move, because I can understand why you guys would prefer e5, but at the same time, if you were to play e5, this e5 is always going to give up this diagonal to black. Also, another route to take is this knight d5 square is completely gonzo. So that's why I'm not the biggest fan of e5. Ooh, I see some stuff in chat. Some spoiler alerts. Okay, so also, if with queen c7 you were just going to keep on waiting with white, again this could happen, again this bishop e7, rook e8, and you still don't have any clear attack as white. So that's why I would try to be a little bit more energetic and take on f5. And okay, I see your idea in the chat, Bashar. You are considering something with bishop d5 to just have this as well. Yes, you are correct. Bishop d5 is an interesting idea. But there is another interesting move. Thank you, Axel. Yeah, so right now all of your pieces are doing something. Well, to be honest, this bishop could be, this d2 bishop, I mean, ideally it could be in a better position, but you don't really see any clear path for it, right? And it is actually doing something. It's maybe protecting this guy, taking this squares away, so it's not completely useless. The one piece that is completely useless right now is this knight, isn't it? So that is why we do this cool move of knight h1, and whoa, knight h1, right? So it's a very awesome and cool move. And yeah, exactly, the knight wasn't doing anything on g3, so you want to relocate it simply. You want to go up to g5 and attack h7. Remember how earlier we were talking about if in a different position, same game, if black were to play fe4, you wanted to take with knight and still have that knight g5? Yeah, these are some like stuff that knight belongs on g5, especially with this weakness on h7 and f7. You need this knight on g5, like you need that knight on g5. You gotta better find a way, right? Okay, so I hope I emphasized this knight on g5 enough. So let's say bishop goes to d7, you follow up with your plan, Rubinstein follows up with his plan. You can't completely ignore this plan because you still want to keep your pieces, ideally, and you also want to be able to keep your file, right? So that's why you would just play rook e1, take, and now so question for you guys: do you think rook e8 is a good move? If not, can you tell me why not? Also, Bashar, yes, knight going to g5 does cost a lot of moves. That's why it's such a brilliant move. It's like it's costing you what, like 4 moves? Yes, but also it's the move that the position needs. And if you don't play this maneuver of knight to g5, you don't really see any other way to improve the knight, right? So I understand how it's hard to see. It would definitely be hard for me to actually make that decision too, but I'm hoping that you guys would at least consider it. After seeing some positions like this, you could consider, okay, so my knight is pretty horrible on g3, how can I make it go a little bit better, right? So you would consider something like knight h1, and you would try to evaluate its benefits or its cons, pros and cons. Yeah, do a pros and cons list right in the game. No, please don't do that in your mind, but do that in your mind. Alright, so yes, rook e8 is not the best move because of take, and queen d5. So Edward Lee, you mentioned queen d5 earlier. You do have the right idea, just maybe a little bit like just one move, flip those moves. Okay, queen d5 is the best idea, and it's pretty simple. I want mate. I mean, can't get any more simple than that. If something like knight e5, now I just eat pawns. Nothing wrong with eating some nice pawns, right? And now this is a very advantageous not endgame, but some pieces are kind of exchanged off. King is still pretty weak. This g7 is pretty weak. Bishop c3 coming next. Now your bishops are monstrous, and yep, everything good, right? Okay. So, yeah, exactly, to be continued with bishop c3. So that's why Rubinstein played knight d8. Knight d8, I think, is a very interesting move. Yeah, late middle game slash soon to come end game or mate. So knight d8 is interesting because it could be like knight e6 or knight f7 and taking, like, controlling this g5 square. So when we are trying to do that, so I think that's why knight e8 is a very interesting move, and trying to just keep away this knight from g5, and also potentially looking for bishop c6. That's another thing to consider. And yeah, so now the other thing to consider is, well, now with knight on d8, this is also a very weak pawn, so keep that in mind as we move forward. So let's say we do our knight h3, bishop c6, you get your queen up. Queen h5 is pretty essential because it takes this e8 away. So be careful with that. I have a question after knight g5 finally appears. Why not h6? Ooh, that's a good question. I'm doing some of the camps for the club, and we actually looked at a position very similar to this mate idea. So the problem is, alright, so I'm going to just do a weird move that did not happen in the game just because I want to show what is wrong with h6. So if h6, white has a very cool idea of mating. Pretty much mate in two. Can anyone tell me? You guys got this. Just need someone to type it. Anyone feel like typing? Oh boy. Ooh. I'm waiting. Yes, thank you, Sydney. Yeah, so the problem is still queen g6. And if you were to take on g5, again, queen h5, and now it's another type of mate. If you don't take, now it's queen h7 is mate, right? Thank you everyone for participating in my questions. And yes, queen g6 is the best one. The one thing that sometimes we tend to forget is, so you are attacking the square, not necessarily this pawn. So even with h6, the pawn moved, but the square still is there. So you are still able to go after that. Okay, so I just wanted to show you this idea with mate, but obviously Rubinstein saw it, and he were not going to allow knight g5, h6 to happen. So that is why black tries to play something like g6. Something like h6, still knight g5. And now, again, queen g6 is coming up. What black could potentially do is take on f4, right? And now if queen g6, you could just take on g5, right? So my question to you right now, it is white to move. What do you want to do? Black just took your pawn on f4. Do you see any cool checks, any cool takes, or any cool attacks? Doesn't have to be cool, just any you kind of glance over checks, takes, and moves with threats. So knight f7 is interesting, knight e6 is interesting, but there's something way more interesting. Rook e8, be careful, the bishop is still on c6. Ooh, rook e7. Rook e7, there's queen e7. So still a lot of things to be careful. What else? What else? So the one thing that I think we all agree on is that we don't really want to do this bishop f4, right? Because if bishop f4, queen f4, and now the queen is the one who's participating in the attack, and we don't want that. Ooh, I'm Annie, you're good. So talking about taking on f4, he can just take back, and now my question is, what do you want to do with your knight? Because queen g6 doesn't work anymore, just queen g5. Rook e6, I'm not sure which position you are referring to rook e6. Well, it won't work right now, again, because of queen g5, but yeah, so rook, that's like the one thing I wouldn't do is take, I mean, among other, if there are blunders, but I wouldn't play bishop f4 just because it brings the queen back in. Even if something like knight f7 looks interesting, it's still going to be pretty painful. This queen is way more active than I ever want any queen to be. Just queen g5, and I mean it's kind of hard to. It gives your opponent chances to slip away, and we don't want slippery opponents, right? So I did have this recommendation of bishop b4 from Imani before. So yeah, bishop b4 is interesting. Because bishop f4, if you move your rook, now I just have a simple rook e8. And if you don't move your rook, if you play something like bishop d6 to block this, now I have my queen g6, right? Take, just queen h5, bye-bye. Alright, so I wanted to kind of show you what would happen if h6. And now let's look at g6. So this position, white to move g6, you have very limited options. You only have basically queen h4 and queen h6. So my question for you is, what do you want? Do you want queen h4 or do you want queen h6? Bashar, I'm not entirely sure when you were talking about rook f2, but if it was after bishop take, bishop queen take on f4, rook f2, you have to be very careful because queen g5 still exists. Alright, yeah, I prefer queen h4 too. Queen h6 is, again, my problem with queen h6 is this queen g7, that just the queen just stumbles in the king side and starts saving the day. So I don't want that. That's why I would want queen h4. But if you feel like queen h4 doesn't really go with your understanding, that's perfectly fine too. You can think more about it. If queen h6, queen g7 makes more sense to you, why not? Alright, so another little bit of piece of trap. That's a new thing that we're laying for opponents. Now I feel like I'm laying a red carpet of traps for my opponents, which I would hope I would like to. Is that if black was to play something like rook e8, now you get to take, and do this cool queen f6. If queen goes to g7, you just pick this guy up, or even, I mean, d8 up. I feel like d8 is even better. I mean, they're both equally good. They're both pieces. We love pieces, right? Eating pieces is always fun. So that's another little trick that you can you can lay out for your opponent. And all right, so right now, let's say black plays pretty nice and plays this king g7. So king g7, black is just defending this potential queen f6 of queen h6, and still your knight is just a problem. So, but right now your knight is better than h3 than on g3, because if your knight was on g3, first of all, your queen was kind of blocked on h4. Second of all, this knight on g3, yeah, it does have potential for sacrifices, but knight on h3 is also protecting your f4 pawn, and it gives your queen chance to regroup. How to remove d4? Yeah, I like that idea. Let's go remove d4. Why not? So, yeah, you are coming up to attack this d4. Also, as soon as you are able to open the center up a little bit, this bishop c3 is going to be very deadly. So, that is another thing to consider. Alright, so let's see. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was, here black has basically two chances. Well, two moves to try and defend d4 pawn. That's a better phrase. One of them is with queen b6, and queen b6 is just kind of just defending, but it's not doing any kind of real threat. I feel like queen b6 is a very similar idea to just bishop c5. You just have to defend that pawn no matter what, because if you lose the pawn on d4, then the game is pretty much over. Just bishop c3 and you might as well start scoring more pieces and pawns, and yeah. Alright, so right now it's white to move. You are attacking this pawn on d4. Now the question is, how can you bring in more pieces to attack it? Whoa. That was my bad. I am not entirely sure why my mouse is slipped. Alright, everything's back to normal. Everything good. Whew. Okay. I'm sorry for the blinking chessboard. Alright, so now, yep, you are correct, Andy. b4 is the best one. I want to remove light bishop too, but I think d4 would be easier. Well, yes, but also your bishop on c4 is pretty strong. And yeah, you are also correct. Queen b6, it does bring up the question with bishop c3. I think still bishop c5 could potentially be the only move. Again, I think we have b4, because if take, you just take that. And this is I mean, it looks kind of scary pawn, but I don't think there's much to it, because queen d4 is coming and you can just pick this guy up. Also, yes, rook e7 is another strong idea. So queen b6, there are a lot of things to be careful if queen b6. But bishop c5, b4, bishop b6. Now this bishop feels like it's kind of just completely just put out of the position, and just the only thing it's doing is just defending this pawn, where this bishop was way more active and way more defensive when the bishop was on d6 right now, right? And also I like the idea of bishop c1, yes, but you have something a little bit more interesting. So what's the difference in the black's position? What weakness is created comparing bishop being on d6 or being on b6? I see you, Imani. Queen e1, interesting. Queen e1, you're going after e5, e7 square, I assume. You have another way of attacking it as well. So rook e5 is another interesting move, but not right now. Right now, you have the chance to activate your queen again. Yep, queen h4. You guys are correct. So this was also a very interesting idea to try and reactivate the queen. I find it very interesting. It's extremely great that how he did it. It's just very simple moves. He didn't do anything crazy or sacrifice a bunch of stuff. Everything very calculated, very interesting, very just simple. The moves that you could see, it's not something that would require a lot of calculation. And queen e1 is also interesting, but queen h4 is having a more direct impact on the king side. So let's say something like rook e8. What would you do after rook e8? Yeah, ideally we want to have the rook on 7th rank, but after rook e8, you have also another interesting move. Be careful with knight g5. Knight g5 is interesting. I just realized I keep saying interesting. But it's, yes, you are attacking h7, but what would you do if h6? Knight e6? Well, it just kind of takes it. So what else? Do you see any interesting outposts you might want to use? Ooh, yay. Yay, actually you are correct. Rook e5 is the best move. The idea is pretty simple. If you take with, if you take my rook, take. Now I just have basically mate in 2. Well, I mean, technically it could be a little bit longer. No, actually, no, 2, that's about it. Just queen h6. If you try with something funny with king f6, I can just do bishop g5. If you try king h8, queen f8, and that's a wrap for this game, right? Okay, so that's why rook e5 is a very interesting move, because black cannot take on e5 because of how weak the king is. And just remember, this bishop used to be on d6 protecting e7, protecting e5. Now bishop is on b6 doing absolutely nothing. So that was a very interesting idea, to bring the queen back to f2, attack d4, and force the bishop to just go to b6. So let's say black tries something with knight f7 to try to kick your rook away. What do you want to do? So quiet, everyone's thinking about how beautiful this position is. Knight g5 is interesting, but so knight g5, what if just take on e5? Would you take on h7? And then what? Take on e5? I mean, it's definitely interesting, but it gives a lot of chances to slip away. So yes, you are correct. Best move is bishop f7. You gotta take it with the queen, because if you take it with the king, the pawn is falling. And so after taking it with the queen, now you guys get this knight g5 that we've been waiting for since, what, like 12 moves ago was that? Yeah, move 18 we played knight h1, and this is move 30. We finally got knight g5, so yay. And yeah, so knight g5 attacking queen and the h7 bishop, so queen g8 is pretty much forced. Now, question for the chat. What do you want to do with your other pieces? So do you feel like, is your attack very strong and you don't need to regroup anything? Whoa. Or if you think you can improve pieces, how? Could you potentially maybe bring some queen back somewhere? Maybe exchange the rooks? Maybe, yeah, Danny, you're right. It's the best idea to exchange these rooks. Whoa. To exchange these rooks and then bring the queen back to e1. So now knight e6 is, yeah, I kind of hit the table. Knight e6 is coming up. Queen e7 is coming up. Let's see, what else is coming up? The one thing that's still bugging me is this bishop, and we need to do something about that. So let's see what would black do. Let's say black just plays bishop c6. You get your queen e7. You get this king h8. Now, you can see that this king is just kind of asking for this bishop to come into this diagonal and say hello and mate. So how can you get that? How can you activate your d2 bishop? Almost there. Just need one more bishop to wrap up this game. So knight f7 is interesting, but let's say just king goes to g7. You give a check, king goes back, you take this. I mean, it's possible you can just pick this piece up. Nothing wrong with that. but it's not, I mean, ideally, if you don't see a way to activate your bishop, this is a very safe way to play it. You pick up a bishop, you're going to win this game. So it's a kind of a risk-free way to win it. So nothing wrong with that. Oh, thank you, Dennis. Hello from Zimbabwe. Wow. So I was actually in South Africa 2014, so thank you. It was a very nice country. All right, let's go back to the position. This is the move I'm talking about, and I saw some players mention it. Nice one, Riketh and Axel. Anyone else who I forgot? Sorry about that. But, so b5 is the move. Yeah, nice one, Mehdi. So, b5, the idea is if you take, now I am just going to, so Captain Fancy, your idea of knight e6 could be played here. Now knight e6, if black just plays something like h5, because what else to play? You get bishop b4. And now you are going to, whoa, I got an error sign. Now you get to bring your bishop the other way. It's something like bishop d8, well, you could just prolong mate for a little bit, but you can't completely put it away. I think it's just take and that's it. I don't see any other reason not to eat a free bishop. If you play something like bishop d5, I can just give check and give another check and bishop f8, wrap that game up. Yeah. Why is knight e6 necessary? Why not? So the thing is, if you were to play bishop b4, what would you do after bishop d8? Knight f7? I mean, I think this is a pretty safe way to win. Okay, let me rephrase. I don't think that knight e6 is extremely necessary. Like, if you don't play knight e6, you're not going to win this game. But knight e6 makes it way, way, way more pressured, because now after knight e6, black cannot touch this queen because queen g7 is mate. This bishop doesn't really have anywhere to go. If bishop d5, then, well, that's just that's also another problem with the position. I'm thinking about, can I just move the knight back? One. Another way, can I just play knight c5 and try to go for, well, for this? Yeah, this king is very, very just under pressure, so knight e6 just puts way more pressure. Also, yeah, anytime. Glad you guys are liking this, because this is a very cool position. Alright, so we were talking about h5 to try and open some room for breathing. We said that we talked about bishop d5 here, and bishop d5 here, you have queen f6, and also, oops, sorry, my bad, I forgot to mention, I don't know why I said knight c5, just queen f6, and that's just way easier win. My bad. Yes. So, knight e6, you are putting pressure and you're also threatening mate. I forgot to mention about the mate part. Happens. We have mate left and right, right? Okay, but joking aside, this is a very cool idea. Knight e6 just brings way too much advantage to the game, and you can mate with bishop on f8, right? Alright, so let's go back and just a little bit more. Let's say black plays queen g7, and that's what black did in the game. Rubinstein played queen g7, one last try and just prolong it a little bit. So, white to move, what do you want to do? Do you think it's time to do some queen exchange and win a piece? Or do you just want to keep on trying to check and attack? And what do you want to do? Attack or eat a piece? Not entirely sure what's going on in the chat, but thank you for wanting mate. Bishop b4, knight f7. Honestly, it's there's nothing wrong with just taking on g7 and just taking a piece. I mean, it's a safe way to go, and that's what Nimzowitsch did too. I think queen g7 is just like a desperate try to prolong the game, but I mean, Rubinstein must have known that with a piece down, he doesn't really have much real chances. So yeah, I mean, if you want to, you cannot, I mean, you can just not take it and try to prolong it a little longer, but this just gives a lot of chances for blunders and mistakes, which could easily be avoided. Like, I'm sure this is, like, looking at it just, I mean, you can easily play something like bishop a5. Oops, nope, that just goes back there. My idea was to try and get my bishop to d4, eat that, and this is an interesting game, should be winning. We'll see how it goes, but it's, why wouldn't you just eat up a piece? All right. Knight f7, king g8, bishop b4. This, what do you do after queen f7? Careful, careful, Imani. This is, don't let the opponent slip, man. You're almost there. No slipping. So better to just take it. Take the piece, just relocate, just very chill. Put that knight on c4. Just protect your pawns. Try to exchange a little bit. Go after more pawns. Try to eat some more pawns. Just very chill. And this is actually where Rubinstein resigned. And it was like this was one of the greatest strategic games that I've seen. I mean, there are a lot of them out there, but this is definitely on my favorite list. And the other thing that I kind of wanted to mention was I thought it was kind of funny that White didn't really touch the king, just made a castle, and I was okay, king is there, king is safe, let's attack now, let's eat pieces, let's go to endgame. And that was kind of interesting, and I just wanted to mention that. And yeah, alright, that's, I actually had about like 4 games prepared to show you today, but this was very interesting and it took all of our time. But don't worry, we'll do a poll for next week to see if you guys would like to see more stuff like this. And if you do, I have a lot of material. This is also a great book that you can also find and look for yourself as well. But yeah, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Have fun. Tune in for Daro and Endgame, and see you next week.